and welcome to China EVs and More, where my co-host Lei Xing and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the China EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. If you enjoy this room, please help us get the word out to other enthusiasts, and of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Li. I am the Managing Director at Sino Auto Insights, a management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.com, which of course, I encourage you all to do. Good evening, Lei. Can you please introduce yourself?
Good morning, sir, and good evening from my side. I'm your co-host, Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review. And this is episode number 73. Before we begin with today's topics, a special announcement. We will be dropping our next Max episode next week, and it will feature Frank Wu, the head of design at
Award-winning Frank Wu.
Award-winning, that's right. They just won 2 Red Dot Awards yesterday for the design of the Robo One and the Robo Charger. So we spend, my goodness, almost 3 hours. So it's going to be another 2-episoder, I guess. And he shared some really intimate and exclusive stuff with us. So stay tuned.
Yes, he is. I feel like we're brothers because he went to undergrad at the College of Creative Studies, which is a design school where a lot of automaker designers have come out of. So there's 3 or 4 design schools, the Art Center in Pasadena, the CCS in Detroit. I think there's 1 or 2 in Europe that are very significant for automotive design. And then he spent 7 years at Cadillac in Detroit and Warren. So spent a ton of time. I think he said 11 years in Detroit, and then about 5 or 6 years ago moved to China. What a great conversation we had. So
I've went through the transcript 2 times already, so it's tons of interesting insights about his life journey and just design itself in the smart EV age. So
yes,
very much.
I think that's the key, because in the smart EV age, and so Frank described the Red Dot Awards to us as the Oscars for industrial designers or for designers. So a very prestigious award that the Jidu team has won. Very, very happy for them. And then he had actually told us that they won, but he didn't want us to say anything because it wasn't official yet. So
and now it's execution phase, right? Now you got the award, and the production version's still waiting behind the scenes, and wish them good luck. So stay tuned. We'll drop probably middle of next week, I guess.
I'd say Wednesday.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. So let me run through a list of topics. Just quick phrases. June EV sales, BYD Tesla global EV sales crown debate, the Ito M7 talking the talk, the Hi-Fi Z reveal, NIO Power Day, Volkswagen's got power with SalzGiga, Evergrande Hengchi 5 finally starts pre-order. Shenzhen, the first Chinese city to allow L3 automated driving on roads, 10 million NEVs on the roads, and China issues more measures to expand consumption of NEVs. And so we don't have to go into details in all of them, but first off the list is the EV sales. So without much surprise, it was record for everybody, pretty much, right?
Yes.
And
so they quickly turned the corner after a challenging April and May.
So we say it was going to take the entire Q2, and that's exactly what happened. And, in retrospect, after a scintillating year in 2021, we had high hopes at the beginning of the year. And, we're pretty much agreed on NEV sales getting to that 6 million mark. And then the lockdown hit, and we were kind of thinking, is it going to get past 5 million? And now, after June, I'm predicting it's going to be over 6 million. This is my latest prediction based on the current trends. Now, it's been a very much roller coaster ride in terms of the up and down sales because of the up and down, in and out COVID cases. And you probably can provide some update because there's been another surge, not surge, but Shanghai has had more cases. I just read Shandong province, one city, had 66 cases reported. So whack-a-mole. And what are your thoughts?
So it is a bit of Groundhog Day because my friends in Shanghai who feel like they have PTSD because some of them, and I kid about the PTSD, but in all seriousness, some of my friends really had they really struggled during that 60 days in Shanghai. So I feel really bad for them because of the lack of food and or just not being able to plan and understand when the next delivery of food was coming and things like that, right? So there are pockets of Shanghai that, a friend of mine said that his wife was 30 minutes late or 20 minutes late to a meeting, and she was lucky because they locked the building down. and the people inside the building were going to have to quarantine there for 2 days, for 48 hours. So it's not citywide. And there are areas in Beijing also that have been restricted, but I'd knock on wood, I don't believe entire cities are going to be shut down, locked down like Shanghai. But I heard there's also a new variant. So
we had someone ask us this question last episode, and you kind of repeated the answer right just now. It's always going to be a whack-a-mole, and it's been happening the last few days. Beijing's got like 2 or 3 cases, I think, reported, some district. And compared to here, like here, the reason chatter is this BA5 variant is causing another surge. So, but these aside, I think people, I tweeted that everybody's had a collective sigh of relief as far as reporting the numbers. So BYD, Tesla, we're supposed to hear about Tesla today, was 70, I think it was 78,000 units that was predicted by CPCA, and that should include exports. But majority of those will be in China because of the EOQ, right? That's as expected. So it's home run pretty much for everybody. And part of that reason is it's a lag, right? You have all these orders that were supposed to be delivered in April and May that was pushed out to June. So if you average it out, it's roughly slightly more than Q1. Q1 was like 1.25 million. I think Q3 is going to be 1.3. So, and second half's always supposed to be better, higher than the first half, especially with this new round of stimulus that are in place, right?
Yeah.
Nationally,
they're injecting a lot of steroids into the system to try to artificially push the momentum back to where it was pre-lockdown, pre-Shanghai lockdown. So
yeah, and then the headlines just now is these 17 state level departments jointly issuing a notice that I mentioned, the measures to expand auto consumption and NEV, is specifically the consideration of delaying or extending the NEV purchase tax exemption policy. And I believe it will happen.
Yeah, I agree.
Anything this is discussed, and especially at a very high level, it's more than likely that it'll happen. Just a matter of how long it will be continued.
It points to how important the automotive sector is to China's economy. And they're going to do whatever it takes, I believe, to try to get EV sales really driven back to a level where all of the major players can thrive.
Yeah, and the other numbers to share is the over 10 million NEVs on the roads, 2.2 million registered in the first half alone out of those 10 million, right? So that's 22%. And then 19.9% of the 2.2 million, that was the penetration for the first half. So we're right at the 20% target for 2025. So, right, that's a foregone conclusion as well. And the amazing thing was we just had the Chinese ambassador Qin Gang. He just tweeted a chart of the NEV park or stock, and as just 4 years ago, it was 2 million. So quadrupled in the last 4 years and doubled in the last year and a half. So this is despite all the disruptions, despite COVID, and imagine what would have happened without those, right?
Well, it's also not just the COVID. Everything, if we're at 10 million, that means that there's enough investment in charging infrastructure and opening of new charging stations. There's no constraints on battery supply. There's, the chip supply is recent, but at the end of the day, if we're hitting 1.5 million units for a quarter, we're still doing pretty good, right? And I tweeted last week, we were joking around earlier, Lei, that the floor is going to be raised to 20,000 units a month. And I think in order for us to hit 6 million units this year in China, almost everyone that's in the tens right now and 9,000 units a month needs to get to 20,000, right?
Yeah. And I think some of these psychological milestones or thresholds that we can look forward to is BYD doing 150,000 a month, potentially 200,000 a month.
But hold on, Lei. Is that BEVs, PHEVs?
Well, we'll go into that.
Or NEVs.
We're talking about NEVs. We'll go into that.
I'm just messing with you. I'm just messing with you.
If Tesla does 70,000, 80,000, can they get to that psychological 100,000 in China, including export? And these smart EV startups, who's going to be the first to get to 20,000? So these are the things that we can look forward to. And I think general rule of thumb that I personally have is, June is over 500,000. So, 2.5 million first half. And you just multiply by 2, and that gets you to 5, and you add 1 more million. Because second half is going to be more than 3 million.
And everyone, just think about what Lei just said. He's talking about Tesla getting to 100,000 in a month. At an annual run rate, that's 1.2 million units coming out of the Shanghai Gigafactory. And just last year, it was less than 500,000. So an increase of 700,000 units in a year is just a mind-bogglingly crazy number.
Yeah, and they're doing this production stoppage this month, I believe, to tune it up a little bit. So at least, right, the 500,000 capacity, they plan to double it. So,
but that means they're probably working at least 6 days a week, and there is no issues with supply. There's no issues with COVID. It has to be running like a machine.
Yeah.
Not one day can be a bad day.
Yeah, let's see where this recent, Shanghai COVID cases, let's see where this goes. Hopefully not another lockdown. I don't think people can take it, but
let me just add this, Lei. Right now, when the getting's good, everybody's working overtime. Yeah. Everybody's overbuilding in case there is a kink in that supply chain. So it's nonstop right now. As long as the local governments and the central government is not impeding the production, they're working their butts off. So
Yeah, it's just been a roller coaster ride that people just want to look up more than anything else. So
I'm not sure we're going to get to 6 million. I'm a bit skeptical just because
we
I just don't know how they're going to be able to contain COVID without any outbreaks. And again, everybody needs to be doing their best to get to 6 million, right?
Well, I would always add an asterisk after the prediction of 6 million. That asterisk being barring any right further disruptions, whether COVID or other supply chain issues.
Yes.
So, but the current, based on June, based on May, based on June, this trend, based on this all-out kind of stimulus, these policies encouraging people to buy NEVs, I don't see why it can't reach 6 million. So that's my take.
And I will say this as well. In order to get to 6 million, there's probably going to be one or two surprises that you and I probably are not going to predict. There's probably going to be a pleasant surprise with one or two EV companies that surprisingly are able to sell 2x more than we would think they would.
Yeah, somebody like a Ito or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because that's who is going to make up the meat of that 6 million units. It's the domestic EV players. It's not going to be a Volkswagen. It's not going to be, because we already have Tesla baked in for 700,000 units, full stop, in China this year. If they get to 1.2, that's a bonus. But they made almost 500,000 last year, so they should be able to get to 700,000 or 800,000 this year. 1.2 is a stretch, and I think you would agree that that's a stretch. But it is going to be an Ito. It is going to be maybe a Hongqi. I'm not saying that. I'm not predicting Hongqi is going to be a pleasant surprise, to be honest with you.
And the other kind of the wild card to throw in here is the number reported by the State Taxation Administration that in June alone there were about 1.1 million ICE vehicles that enjoyed that have purchase tax policy. I forgot the total tax savings, but so that's in place until the end of the year. So that might draw away some of the demand. So I believe we might actually see a slight fall of the penetration. But regardless, it's going to be 20% any way you look at it for 2022. So
I should note, Lei, that all of the Chinese schools are officially out for summer. So the next week or two are probably not going to be that great for sales. They're traditionally not anyways. So my sons both finished and I say this in jest because they're in third and fourth grade, but they finished their finals yesterday. And we'll talk about this personal thing for 30 seconds. My oldest son, he's in fourth grade, and about a third of his class is leaving. They're leaving to move abroad. So the exodus is real. And so Lei knows about Fangsaudi, but Fangsaudi is a local school in Beijing, one of the better local schools that's located in CBD. And that's where my sons go.
Yeah.
It's taught in Chinese. There's about an hour of English every day, but they get plenty of English at home. And so they are special because they have a guojibu, so an international department. So you have to have a foreign passport to enroll in that section or that department. And so technically all of his classmates are foreign students, but many of them are just Chinese except for the passport. And so yeah, it feels different this time, Lei, because in the 20 years that you were here, things moved in cycles, right? You know, old people or people would leave, new people would come in, but this time it does feel a little bit different because of what's been happening over the last several months. So there's going to be new foreigners that come in, but the constraint that I think is the difference this time than the other times that we felt, Lei, when people come in, people leave, is that teachers are leaving.
Yeah.
And so one of the reasons that vice presidents get shipped over here is because there's international schools where their kids can go, and they're filled with foreign teachers, and those foreign teachers are leaving. So it's going to be much harder to convince an up-and-coming executive at X company or Y company to leave Germany, to leave the United States and come to Beijing or Shanghai. And I was told, Lei, that Shanghai is now, again, a hardship post for executives from foreign companies. So hardship post meaning that if you moved from Los Angeles to New York City or Los Angeles to Frankfurt, it would just be kind of a transfer. But hardship means you need extra convincing to come. Shanghai was not a hardship post for a very long time, but I was told now it's becoming a hardship post because of what happened with the lockdown. But let's get back to talking cars.
Yeah. So Fangcaodi is where Tesla's first ever showroom is located in China.
Yes.
That opened in 2013-ish, I think. So almost 10 years ago.
Let me give you a little history on that, because you tell me when you left. So there was that right when you walked into the south entrance of Parkview Green, on the right side, that was where the Tesla dealership was. Now they've moved it to the bottom floor, and it is a massive retail location.
Yeah,
okay.
Okay.
And Hi-Fi moved in to that location. And then Hi-Fi left. No, it was Celine moved into that location.
Oh, yeah.
Then Celine went out of business. And then Hi-Fi moved into that location. And across from Hi-Fi, there's Polestar. And Polestar closed now. And so right now, I think there's only Tesla and Hi-Fi, but Hi-Fi moved out of the retail store too and became a kiosk in the bottom, because in malls in China, the bottom floors are normally where the canteens are, or the cafeteria.
Yeah.
So Hi-Fi has a kiosk in the middle of the eating area of Parkview Green. So, and just so everyone knows, Parkview Green is one of the most high-end malls in Beijing. There's a Rolex, there is a Lululemon, there is a Gap.
And right across from it is the Shimao Tianjie, which is also pretty upscale as well. Yeah, the place, right? It's called,
it wasn't, but it was losing a lot of foot traffic to Parkview Green, so it upgraded itself. And so now there's a Muji, a Uniqlo, a Jordan store. That Aiwei store, Lei, closed.
Not surprising.
But there's still an Xpeng kiosk in Shimao Tianjie. So
they come and go. It's a sign. They come and go, just like these smart EV startups. They come and go.
Yeah, and there's always brisk foot traffic in the Tesla retail store. So no surprise there.
Anyway, so speaking of Tesla, we had this kind of social media debate, mostly on Twitter, I guess, about BYD getting that sales ground. And there was...
Well, even Steve Levine kind of lectured us.
Yeah, and I had tweeted that for China EVs and more, we go by the Chinese national standard, which includes PHEVs and BEVs and fuel cell vehicles. Because I think the term new energy vehicles is a China-specific term, whereas in the rest of the world, it's just electric vehicles, right? And even the Chinese, 新能源车, the NEV versus 电动车. Actually, the 电动车 or EV is more, what's the word? It describes how the car is powered. It's powered by electricity, literally.
Yeah.
电动 means electricity-powered vehicle. Whereas new energy, it's like, what the heck is new energy, right? For people that are not familiar with the term. But it's anything that's driven, right? So if it's, you electric driven, then it would be considered a NEV, which
And
PHEVs, BEVs. So
and the Chinese names for the Lei is literally defining what Xinneng means new energy, literally.
yeah,
And Diandong means
electric
electric
energy.
power.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it literally means what it says in English. So there's no transliteration with any of that. And, I just like poking the Tesla guys because it feels like anytime you say something bad, they take it personally. You're taking money out of their pocket or something, right? So it's like, and I I wrote that in my newsletter. I was like, here, I'll just read it real quick. BYD sells both PHEVs and BEVs, while Tesla sells only BEVs. So it depends on who you ask. But we talk about NEVs because we're talking about the China market, and there's no denying that Tesla is the global leader.
Yeah, and also there's a difference if you look at the Chinese press. I didn't see that much, because the way Chinese press reported it was BYD was the global sales crowns in the Xinneng, which is correct because it includes PHEVs. But in the Western press, you often see EVs being used. So when you say BYD takes the EV sales crown over Tesla, then right,
that's journalists. That's journalists being lazy.
Yeah, but everybody uses EVs. Nobody uses NEVs in the Western,
right?
Whether industry or generally the press. So I think that's where the confusion came from. But
and if you talk to the Li Auto guys, they will tell you that their cars don't run on gas. The engine recharges the battery.
Yes, and that's why there's even a difference between EREV and PHEV, because EREV, the engine don't actually power the wheels. It's always the motors and the battery that's powering the wheels. The engine's there to replenish the battery. And that's the difference between EREV and PHEV. Whereas the PHEV, the engine also powers the wheels, right? And somehow there was a debate, several years ago on Li Auto, being, what is that? People, right? So finally they said it's PHEV essentially, but actually there is a difference.
Yeah, there is
a difference. And
I've been corrected a few times now.
Yeah, so. And that's why there was another debate that this CEO of Wei, he called out Huawei's Richard Yu for basically, and indirectly Li Auto also, he basically said EREV is an old technology. The regular hybrid is better. The DHT or the PHEV is better. I don't know. I mean, it's because the Ito and the Ceres, they're all EREVs, right? Going with the Li Auto route.
The L9 is still an EREV?
L9 and 1, they're all EREVs, right? So,
and we're lucky enough to have Steve Levine, who's, I want to say, one of the foremost battery experts in the world on a group chat. And he did, I didn't think about this, but, after he had posed the question, it made me think. And so if there is a delta between raw material supply and forecasted battery cell manufacturing production, then it could be the PHEVs and the EREVs that make up that delta if we're not able to build BEVs. So he made a good point. I think that's worth thinking about.
And I've heard that Shanghai, starting January of next year, is no longer giving out these sort of green license plates for somebody like a Li Auto. I have to fact check that, but I heard there's some
a purity test.
Yeah, local policies going on that kind of, well, I mean, I think eventually it'll be BEVs, even for BYD, right? They have more than 50% BEVs and the rest are PHEVs, the DMIs. Li Auto, eventually they will, get rid of the EREVs. I believe, in the future, right? So they're coming out with 2 BEVs next year.
I told you the challenge that the rumor that I'd heard about Li Auto and the challenge with the EREV being exported, right? So
Yeah.
haven't verified that yet, so we won't bring it up yet. So
Yeah. But while we are at, the other thing about BYD and Tesla is MIT just announced or published the dual credits for 2021, and lo and behold, BYD and Tesla are the top 2 getters. I don't go into the details, but basically a lot of money on the table because of these credits.
if we recall back, Tesla was profitable last year or a year and a half ago for a couple quarters because of the credits. So it's a lucrative business for them.
Yeah, so BYD, let's say if they do 1.5 million this year, Tesla 700,000, 800,000. I mean, you can do the math, right? The credits that they have at disposal to be transacted, to be traded, another, income source.
So Lei is talking about OEMs being penalized for the ratio of ICE vehicles to new energy vehicles because, let's be clear, they can be plug-in hybrids and EREVs currently, and you'll get a credit. You won't get as many credits as a pure battery electric. So those credits get accumulated and they can be sold to a Volkswagen, to a General Motors, who still predominantly manufacture internal combustion engine vehicles. And so it's a huge revenue source, and it's not something that's sustainable because the credit system is going to go away. And if we recall 10 or 15 years ago, California had the exact same policy because China's policy is mimicked from California's. And so what Tesla does is they sell these credits. Last year, famously, they sold them to Volkswagen here in China. And I think there was kind of a bit of irony with that. So there was a year or 2 years, I believe, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Lei, where BYD made up to $1 billion in profit from those credits. So no subsidies. Sorry, I'm talking 2 different things.
Yeah,
Apologies.
subsidies and credits. So
yeah.
So quickly on the 3 new models that I mentioned, the Ito M7, the Hi-Fi Z, and finally the Hongzhi 5. These were the sort of the significant model reveals or launches this week. I feel like every week there's been key reveals ever since the Robo 1 we've been tracking, right? I think it was just interesting to see not the products themselves, but the talk that the CEO makes, right? The M7, right? M7, we're the best. No, not the M7, the Hongzhi 5.
The best under 300,000.
Yeah, the guy, he said the best under 300,000. And when the price came out, it was 179,000.
So $26,000 US in.
Yeah. And they have
with the current FX rate.
They have this sort of a escrow account with a notary where you pay and you don't have to pay until you get your deliveries. And you can return the car within 15 days if you're not happy with it. But I'm sure there's all kinds of small print written. But
so for those who are wondering why Hongzhi is doing this, is because their parent company Evergrande is a real estate company that is terribly in debt.
Very
I think they might
bad
be
reputation. Yeah,
I think they might be the most indebted company in the world, and so they started this EV company. The rumor was when they started this EV company it was a way for them to get cheap land because they wanted to get manufacturing licenses. But they've assured the buying public that they're in it for the long haul. And as a way to allay concerns that they're not going to remain an ongoing concern, they are offering these escrow accounts and these guarantees and these refunds to customers. So,
yeah, and I think everybody's seeing, that SOP and started deliveries and actually people, driving it past the 15 days and owning it. Everybody expecting, and when's that going to happen? And it's being delayed like tons of times.
Yeah. It is dizzying the number of products on the mid-size SUV that are under 300,000 RMB. It is dizzying.
Yeah.
And they're mostly domestic, right? So
yeah, right. And the Hi-Fi Z, which actually we talked a little bit with Frank Wu of Jidu on some of the design features. That Hi-Fi Z, I thought it was even more futuristic than the Robo One, right?
Yes.
The way it's designed, the very hardcore lines of that body, right? And the features. And this is something that's selling for over $100,000.
I want to say, yeah, so it'll be at least 2x the Robo One, pricing wise, and I want to say, Lei, that it's the closest thing to almost like today's Rice Rocket or what a gamer would buy as a vehicle. Yeah. So
what's that movie called? Kid.
Knight Rider.
Yeah, Knight Rider, right? That type of.
Yeah.
I think they actually used video to present that model from the Knight Rider. So
yes, so I'm anxious. I'm curious because, and you know this, they just opened their own Twitter account about a month ago, and so they're trying to get some Western eyeballs looking at it. They sent me.
Well, they're going into Europe.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because I really do think it might be too edgy for Europe. So
yeah, and then the Ito M7 is basically a Li 1 wannabe. That's my conclusion. Based on everything they presented, the price point, how they did the marketing videos, everybody was like, oh, they're copying Li 1. Even the size, the design.
I WeChatted my Li Auto insider. Crickets, nothing. Hey, what'd you think of this? Nothing. He didn't say anything.
Yeah, but I think, like we said, it might be one of those sleeper models.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing, right? Because the L9, the ES7, and what was the other one? There's one more, but they all had this. The families in those videos could have been the exact same family,
right.
And they're all camping and
playing
they
video
were
games.
looking at the stars. And so they are going after the exact same thing. And it isn't, I wish it was the better product will win because I just don't believe that. I think it's going to be marketing budget. I think it's going to be, and this is where these CEOs are getting out in front and saying, no, I'm more Li Auto than you're Li Auto, right? So it's kind of crazy and it's fun to watch.
But the thing is, they didn't specifically say, they were competing against Li Auto. All the spec comparisons they put up on the presentation are the BMW X7s, the Mercedes GLSs. That's the segment and the brands and the products they're targeting at.
And this is where it's a stretch because do I think Li Auto, the L9, can convert what would be a BMW buyer? Yes. Do I feel the M7, Ito M7 can convert? I'm a little more skeptical with that.
Sleeper.
Yeah. Well, you know how aggressive Huawei is being entering this market. So they're going to do everything in their power.
The Richard Yu, he was at the industry conference, the Blue Book Forum, and he basically said the only division that we're losing money is this automotive business. I think they've turned a profit on their cloud business. And then he's like, we need to get rid of or end sales of ICEs as soon as we can.
But to me, this is a technology company being really naive about the automotive industry because why hasn't Apple built an Apple car? Because it's super expensive and they don't know if they can do it the way that they can build their products. Huawei, to think that they would be able to turn a profit in 26 or 24 months, 36 months is ridiculous to me. But there's still a lot of pressure because their handset revenue just disappeared instantly, right? So the irony of Shenzhen announcing that they're going to have designated areas that will allow for L3 capable vehicles to be driven. And I think the main thing that is the requirement for all Chinese vehicles now is that there's going to be some sort of light or indication that says the autonomous function is on. And the reason I say that's ironic is because it's the same time where Cruise had this huge traffic jam and there was a crash, a Waymo crash in the United States. So it's, on the other side of the world, we're still having problems blocking and tackling. But, Well,
the thing that sticks out to me for this new, by the way, it's a new regulation. I think that's going into effect on August 1st, I believe. And it says that under L3, they didn't specifically say L3, L4, L4, but under conditionally automated driving, the kind of the safety driver or whoever is behind the wheel is going to be responsible in case of accidents. That sticks out to me. That's a bit interesting and debatable. Whereas, let's say a Mercedes, right?
Because it's a gray area, right?
Right. So I don't know. That's interesting.
And we're just not going to see all these videos of people using their L3 ADAS or autonomous function, while they're sleeping and stuff. I just don't know if we're going to see that in China.
Yeah, quickly on the NIO Power Day, a lot of numbers were published, released. And I think a couple of that stand out to me was they actually showed how many batteries are in their swap stations. Did you catch that? It's 3821, 3821 long range, and 5,140 standard range. So that comes out to be about 9,000. And if you divide by the number of stations, 1,000, and then you average 9 per station. So you can go back to that Grizzly report and kind of compare, this is what NIO said and whether Grizzly report had it right or not, right? So that was interesting.
Yeah. I'm certain that was one of the reasons they came out with all these numbers, because there are a lot of numbers that they threw out.
I think that was one of the aims of this Power Day, is just to indirectly tell Grizzly report, shut your mouth.
Yeah, you're full of shit. So.
And 3/4 of the more than roughly close to 220,000 NIO owners have done a battery swap. 3/4. And then 100 of the 1,000 are actually sort of the maintenance-free stations, so there's nobody there.
Mm-hmm.
You just go and do the battery yourself, right? So there's nobody physically there looking after it, but there's somebody behind the scenes looking at. They showed this NIO Power Cloud and how it helps with smart swap station selection, smart operation, smart planning, and the electric grid, how they interact with the electric grid. And I think the other most important thing out of the Power Day was the hint that their third generation power swap stations and the 800 volt platform batteries, they basically said this is open to the entire industry, the battery swap system and the packs. So that's very interesting, because this is going on the same time as the White House announcing in that document that the Tesla superchargers may be opening up to potential third-party brands in the US. So I thought that was what I got out of the Power Day, is this potential of utilization of non-NIO brands. And we've talked this quite a few times before, and it looks like it's got good potential. It may happen. And yeah, the other number I got was the one-click service actually served 54 different brands.
NIO's just a really interesting company because they're doing a lot of things that, I'll make a general statement. for anyone, any Westerner who thinks that there's no innovation coming out of China, let me tell you that you're completely, completely wrong. Just to piggyback off of your numbers about NIO, Tesla also announced that they have now 2,000 supercharging stations in China. Compare that with 1,400 in the United States. These 2,000 charging stations, supercharging stations, consist of 8,700 chargers. So it is very significant for Tesla as well, because if they're going to get to that 1.2 million production number, then let's say that 70% of those units stay in China, they're going to have many, many more Teslas on the road in China. So having the 2,000 supercharging stations, and it's funny because I was reading that they had that milestone of 1,000 swapping stations, and then 2 days later, I see that the number creeped up to 1,011. So NIO, they put out these swapping stations pretty quickly. So
Yeah.
this is where my concern is for the U.S. I think they're still debating about how much to invest in charging infrastructure. They're still trying to figure out who the right partners are. We had that conversation with XCharge, and I think it's interesting. I think it's a huge opportunity for them in the U.S. market, but they need help. The U.S. government needs to just have some really laser focused plan to get this stuff going. So
Yeah. But just I think we're now talking, NIO, the kind of not the pioneer, but the one who's most successful with battery swapping, and Tesla, who's most successful with supercharging. These two different players now opening up to others. This gets really interesting. One is whether they want to do it. NIO wants to do it. Tesla might be hesitant. And if you're a Tesla owner, do you want that to? I guess NIO really don't care, but it becomes in the future. I mean, I think one comment that Qin Hong he made was that all the EV owners in the world, whatever the brand, we're all in the same family. It's kind of cheesy, but
well, it indicates to me because at the end of the day, it's still probably a dollars and cents thing, right? Where maybe utilization rates aren't as high as they need to be. So and they're not, and it's not a key that they're churning, right? I think they designate which swapping stations, which supercharging stations are open to everyone. I don't think they're opening up 100% of them right away.
Yeah, so many factors are making this, potentially the next kind of big movement in the EV space that you can charge wherever. So I would like it, because it expands. You have less range anxiety.
And if there's any standards that need to be set, guess what? They are in the driver's seat because everybody else is using their standard, potentially. But to your question, right, or to your statement earlier, currently supercharging stations with Tesla, that's one of the main moats that they have that differentiate themselves. Swapping stations for NIO, although when CATL gets involved, when Geely gets involved, it's going to be quickly commoditized. So if there's a premium experience for NIO swapping stations that they can maintain the differentiation between a CATL swapping station, then they should. But you know how fast things happen in China, man. Like you get copied and it's not a differentiator anymore.
Right. And then there's the other side of, NIO wants to do it, but as a non-NIO brand, do I want to accept it? That's another issue, right? So
I think one of the Euro brands will eventually sign up. I won't say a German brand, but a struggling French brand, perhaps, or struggling. You know what I'm getting at. So because there's gonna be companies that need to ride coattails here in China, foreign companies, because the numbers just aren't good. Okay, so the two feel good stories right now on the premium segment is Lincoln and Cadillac, but they come from a low base. They're growing, but they're coming from a low base. Audi is struggling a little bit. I think Mercedes is struggling a little bit, specifically on the EV stuff. And I don't know if they're going to be able to fight back to get that market share back. I think it's gone forever. So
it's bleak, very bleak. So anything else? Volkswagen?
Yeah, the last thing, let's talk about Volkswagen. Yeah. What did you think of SalzGiga? Let me start off the conversation. There was groundbreaking yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yesterday. And Diess announced SalzGitter is going to be the first location for up to 6 gigafactories in Europe alone, with potentially more coming out of North America. They've created a separate company called PowerCo that's going to be managing the manufacturing, the data, the clean energy aspects of each of these factories. The second factory is supposed to be in Valencia in Spain, and it will get up to 60 gigawatt hours by 2027 or something like that. But the first battery cell, which will be prismatic and an LFP, will not come off that line until 2025, which in EV terms, in EV years, is a lifetime away. So they're moving. And let me get on my soapbox for a second, Lei, because Diess also said over the last couple of weeks, we're going to overtake Tesla in 2025 for sales volume, and we're hiring thousands of coders in China. China for China, not Germany for China. But then, so he speaks out of the right side of his mouth when he says, we're going to hire a bunch of coders, they're going to be for China, but then we're going to send Ralph Brandstatter over and managing them. So that's talking out of the left side of his mouth. Anyways, this is a good thing because we know that the legacy automakers, GM, Ford, announced plans in Kentucky, Tennessee, Ohio, and Michigan to build gigafactories. So this is necessary, right? But 2025 is a lifetime away.
Yeah, so first of all, this is big money. 20 billion over the course of next however many years. And each of these are 40 gigawatt hours. So 240 in total. And this is actually the 6 total were announced at the Volkswagen Power Day, if you remember, in March of 2021. So, and the 2025 timeline was also announced then. And they had announced the SalzGitter as the first one. The second one is actually with the Northvolt in Sweden. And the third one is the Valencia, which was recently decided. And there's 3 more. And we should point out that Volkswagen signed a strategic deal with China's Gotion High Tech, to help them with this unified cell development for the SalzGitter or SalzGiga. That was signed a year ago. Okay, so and Gotion itself, remember, they just opened up their first European plant in Germany 2 weeks ago, right?
6 gigawatt hours.
Yeah. So it looks like they didn't say anything this time on Gotion, but it looks like Gotion will be a key partner since Volkswagen is a shareholder in Gotion, and Volkswagen is a shareholder in Northvolt, which is the second Giga, right, in Sweden. So, I mean, this has kind of China written all over it, but they didn't specifically mention Gotion in today's event.
I don't know if that would have been politically.
Yeah.
You know, I think there was a reason that was in the fine print of a press release and not part of the headlining feature. So,
and then the other thing that you mentioned about Diess talking to the Changqing CEO of Carrier China in that Diess Talks series, he defined exactly the 2 issues that, like, he understands what the problem is. First, the UI UX user experience, and second, the autonomous driving features. And he also said in that conversation,
So everything.
Yeah. And he also said in that conversation that we can't just hire a bunch of people outside the industry. And I bet you would agree with that, right? Because we talk about this. And he said we need to do something big, which he kind of alluded. He didn't expand. So let's look forward to what kind of big things they're going to do.
So I've talked to a couple of large OEMs, just kind of informal consultation, and I've whiteboarded with a few people, even some EV startups. One in particular that you know about, Lei, and I've talked about this with them and helped them try to build a strategy around it because. And you and I are on a group chat with another executive at a Chinese EV startup. He does not seem to be worried about Volkswagen poaching his best talent because it's not just about software developers. It's going to be user experience designers and interaction designers, and it's going to be information architects and project managers, which the good ones are really hard to find and they're really expensive in China because you can find a coder. But the costs have increased significantly to find developers in China, full stop. But the talent level of software developer is nowhere near, and I'm speaking because the volume is here, but the quality in general is much higher still in the United States, generally speaking. So
yeah, in the current Chinese smart EV narrative in China, I think the foreigners have been long forgotten by these Chinese brands. So what I'm saying is, if you look at the news and the events and the debates, it's often one Chinese brand talking the talk and trying to compete with another Chinese brand, right?
mm-hmm.
The foreigners, they're just forgotten. Like, we don't care about them. That's the environment that
the Chinese EV startups can also offer much more upside in the form of options, restricted shares, etc. Volkswagen can't do that. So I would be intrigued if I was a decent designer to go to Volkswagen because of the history. But if I'm younger, I'm probably more pro China EV, domestic EV brands. So it'll be interesting to see how they get to that thousands of software developers that Deese is talking about hiring. And a reminder to everyone that not only will this episode come out next week around Wednesday, but hopefully we'll have our conversation with Frank Wu, who is the head of design for Jidu Auto. A great conversation. The first part's much more about his life story, working at BAIC, how he got to Jidu. And then part 2 is going to be much more about his actual working at Jidu and the processes and the design aspects for the Robo One. So
yeah,
we're really excited to share these two episodes with you.
Yeah, so out of the 7 Max episode guests that we've had so far, Frank Wu by far shared the most on his personal journey. And I mean, he's young. I think he was born in 1989, so he's almost a post-90s. Imagine, right?
And he had nothing but good things to say about his counterpart in engineering and Zhou Xia, his boss, the CEO of Jidu Auto. So again, it's something that you should definitely listen in on if you're curious about design and the difference between, because he compares and contrasts his experience at Cadillac, which he also was really proud of.
Yeah, so next week, next episode, we'll talk, today CPCA numbers come out. Next week, the CAAM number come out. And next week, we still have a new brand reveal, Geely's Radar electric pickup brand. So we'll talk about that.
So I tweeted that in the US, Americans would call it a cute little truck and Australians would call it a ute. But because to me, it looks much more like an El Camino than a flat out pickup truck. So I think it's just because it's not an F-150.
Yeah, from what they've showed, it looks nice.
Yeah.
But, it's a very niche market.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAuto LEINSIGHT. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.